Good evening. It is 5:15. It's Monday, November 28th, and the Carroll City Council is now in session. Would you all please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Okay, all are in attendance. We have tonight's consent agenda, and I will read it as follows. We have approval of the minutes of the November 14th meeting, approval of this cycle's bills and claims. There are no licenses or permits to approve tonight. We have fiscal year 24 budget schedule and council meeting dates for calendar year 23. We have a report of a bid opening for a compact excavator at the cemetery, report of a bid opening for a front mount mower, cab and blower for the Parks Department, and also a report of a bid opening for a slit seater for the Parks Department. Is there any questions about tonight's consent agenda? And if not, seek a motion to approve.
Second.
Okay, Tom and then Kyle. Any further discussion? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Bordenaro?
Yes.
Strack? Yes. Base? Yes. Seaman?
Yes.
Dirks?
Yes.
Bauer?
Yes.
Motion is approved.
Thank you. Item number 4 on tonight's agenda is oral request communications from the audience. This is on any item that is not on tonight's agenda, and I see we have one.
Randy Toff, 7 White North Adams. I'm just curious of the status of the council on the parking on the 700 block of Adams. I spoke to the engineer, they said that the end of November is about the time that they would consider anything, any changes that could be amended into the contracts at this point. So I'm just curious what the official status is.
If you'd like to, or Randy, whoever.
Randy, I think you spoke with Randy Carroll a week or so ago. Since that time, we have indicated to the engineers to design it as is, with the parking still in place.
Okay.
Okay?
My consternation was I spoke at 8 o'clock with the engineer and McClure, and they said it was in, and then I spoke to Randy at 8:29, and he said you were still thinking about it.
Today?
No, last,
Oh,
10
no.
days ago Friday.
No, I think like crazy. We got it done right away, so it's
you.
done. Thanks for,
You're welcome.
Thanks for checking back.
Anyone else? Hearing none, we'll move on to item number 5, under ordinances. And Chad, we have the second reading of the Carroll Muni Golf Fees and Charges Proposed Rate Increases.
Yeah, absolutely. And at this time, we haven't had any word from the public, general public, about it. Our recommendation is to continue to move forward with it.
Very good. Any questions for Chad regarding the second reading? I've heard nothing. We've heard nothing at City Hall, have we? Any of you heard much?
No.
No.
Then if you'd be in agreement, I would seek a motion to approve the second reading and then consider whether or not you want the third or not.
I don't have a problem waiving the third. I haven't heard anything.
Is that a motion to approve and waive the third?
Yes.
Okay, Carolyn, and then seconded by Tom. To approve the second reading, waive the third for the Carroll Muni Golf Course Fees and Charges. Any further discussion? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Dirks?
Yes.
Bordenaro?
Yes.
Strack? Yes. Seaman?
Yes.
Base? Yes. Bauer?
Yes.
Motion is approved.
Perfect. Now we'll need to move to adopt that, correct? Is there a motion to adopt the proposed or the ordinance increase?
So moved.
Second.
Carolyn and then JJ. Any further discussion? Hearing none, roll call again, please.
Bordenaro?
Yes.
Dirks?
Yes.
Bauer?
Yes.
Seaman?
Yes.
Strack? Yes. Base? Yes. Ordinance is adopted.
Perfect, thank you. Item number 6 on tonight's agenda, under resolutions, is the Rolling Hills South Condominiums Urban Renewal Plan. And there's 2 resolutions attached to this. Laura?
Yes, thank you, Mark. Let me make my notes here real quick. So tonight, there are 2 resolutions for this particular topic for the Rolling Hills South Condominium Urban Renewal Plan. The first one deals with what we've talked about with a couple of the other urban renewal areas in the past couple council meetings, is an annual appropriations for the amount of taxes that would be collected in the next fiscal year to certify those taxes to the auditor to start collecting. As you recall, that this development agreement allows for what's called an economic development grant for up to 10 years of payments, but not to exceed $72,000. So as long as it takes to collect that, plus we have an LMI, what's called an LMI set aside, which we'll work through that. Then the other item on here is a resolution, which basically is asking for funds, if there's available TIF funds, once we complete our payment to the developer, to reimburse the cost of what it took to set up the urban renewal plan, do the development agreement, and then working through the reinstituting of that development agreement most recently. So those 2 different resolutions for this particular area.
Perfect. Okay, any questions for Laura on this one? So I would seek a motion to approve the first resolution, which is the annual tax increment finance appropriation. Is there a motion to that effect?
So moved.
Second.
JJ and then Kyle, to approve the annual tax increment finance appropriations resolution for fiscal year '24. Any further discussion? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Base?
Yes.
Shrek? Yes. Dirks?
Yes.
Ford Narrow?
Yes.
Bauer?
Yes.
Seaman?
Yes.
Resolution is approved.
Thank you. And then I would seek a motion for the second resolution, which would authorize and confirm the costs associated of the agreement. Is there a motion to that effect?
Second.
Tom, then Kyle. Any further discussion? Hearing none, roll call again, please.
Seaman?
Yes.
Shrek? Yes. Base? Yes. Dirks?
Yes.
Ford Narrow?
Yes.
Bauer?
Yes.
Resolution is approved.
Thank you. Laura, you're still on for the next one. Item 6B under resolutions tonight is seventh amended and restated urban renewal plan for the amended and restated Central Business District.
Yes.
There's 2 of that one, too. 2 resolutions there, too. Go ahead.
So, thank you, Mark. So the first resolution is following up from a conversation we had at the last council meeting, where we are seeking to do an internal loan from the sewer utility fund to the streets capital project to fund a portion or part of the funding for the Adams Street reconstruction project that is scheduled to be done or to be constructed next calendar year. We've done this numerous times, and the only thing I guess that's really different on this one is I did increase the interest rate in the past, since interest rates had been so low, like what was in the bank account and things like that. I did increase it from 0.25% to 2% because that's probably more the market. It's still under the market. If you recall, when we actually did do a debt issuance here this past summer, or actually in October, the interest rate we got was roughly 3.5%. But this would be more in line with probably what some of our investments are in the bank. Is they're averaging out, I'm gonna guess, around that too. It could probably be higher, but I didn't wanna, feel like we were over and above the market. So I did propose using a 2% interest rate to repay ourselves with those TIF monies. Then the second resolution is very similar to what we just talked about. It's requesting funds to repay the general fund for the cost that it was to do the 7th amended and restated urban renewal plan that we amended back, I think it was about a year ago we did that. So this is to ask for those funds out of the TIF, mostly legal fee, planning fees. And then this also would give us a little bit of, I think I put in here, $50,000. This would also give us a little bit of room to work with other planning ideas that would come up with other projects in the urban renewal area that we could potentially work with not the engineers,
Allers
excuse
and
me,
Cooney.
Allers, thank you, with the attorneys for other ideas and things that would come up. Then we wouldn't have to bring this resolution back every single time we did something. So we'll track those costs.
Yeah. I have no questions. Does anybody have any questions about both these resolutions? All right, I would seek a motion to approve the first resolution to authorize a loan to the Streets Capital Project Fund with repayment from the Downtown Urban Renewal Tax TIF Fund. Is there a motion to that effect?
So moved.
Second?
Very good. Okay, so we got Laverne and then Carolyn. Any further discussion? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Bauer,
Yes.
Base. Yes. Seaman,
Yes.
Dirks.
Yes.
Shrek.
Yes.
Bornero.
Yes.
Resolution is approved.
Very good. And then I'd seek a motion to approve the second one, which again would just reimburse the costs of the agreement. Is there a motion to that effect?
So moved.
Laverne
Second.
and JJ. Any further discussion? Hearing none, roll call again, please.
Seaman,
Yes.
Shrek.
Yes.
Bauer.
Yes.
Base.
Yes.
Dirks.
Yes.
Bornero.
Yes.
Resolution is approved.
Perfect, thank you. Moving right along. Jeff, the next one's yours.
Yes,
Region 12 Council of Governments Agreement.
prior to Mike Poggy Weaver's leaving, he made an agreement with Region 12, or had them write a contract to provide the city with assistance with planning and zoning issues, urban revitalization, and things like that for a period of time between now and March 31st. The notion being that with two of our people in the building department being new and myself being new, that we may need additional assistance from them. So this is a short-term contract with Region 12 to provide that type of advice to us on an hourly basis of $75 per hour.
You've got a copy of it in our packet there.
Yeah. And we did have Dave take a look at it to make sure that we were covered there. I think everything was fine, so.
Yeah. And I think Chris had mentioned to you, just kind of casually, that they're not seeking to nickel and dime if somebody's got a quick, fast phone call.
Right,
It's
this
out
was
to
more
tomorrow.
for if they were actually sitting down for hours at a time.
Right.
Doing any kind of work for us.
Which we've got, projects under consideration right now that is likely going to have happen before we got
Right.
city manager up and ready to do so. So the motion would be to approve the agreement with Region 12 Council of Governments to do this work for us at a rate of $75 an hour. Is there a motion to that effect?
So moved.
Tom
Second?
and Carolyn? Any further discussion?
We might be prepared to, down the road, extend this. This is until March.
March
end of
31st, I think.
Yeah, if we don't get our city manager in place by then, we might look at extending this again.
We have a meeting out there tomorrow night, so I'll maybe mention that to Chris, that might be something they'll look at.
All right.
Very good. Any further discussion? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Base.
Yes.
Seaman,
Yes.
Bornero.
Yes.
Shrek.
Yes.
Bauer.
Yes.
Dirks.
Yes.
Resolution is approved.
Very good. Thank you. And item 7A, Randy, going to visit with us about the water system preliminary engineering report, quite lengthy.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. In February, the Department of Natural Resources issued a operation permit revision that included a requirement that the city perform a preliminary engineering report on the water system with, I guess, the goal of providing alternatives to maintain chlorine residuals or increase and maintain chlorine residuals primarily in the northeast part of the city. There are low chlorine residuals at other locations in the city, but the northeast part is probably the main source of low chlorine. The permit required that the report be submitted back to the DNR by the end of the calendar year, December 31st. A professional services agreement has been entered into with JEO Consulting Group. They have completed the report. A copy was provided to you. It does examine the low chlorine residuals and evaluates the potential changes to the system to increase those residuals. The report is complete and detailed. It does provide the evaluation and summary, but in the end, the summary of their recommendations include about 4 different alternatives. One being operational changes, and there are 3 different operational changes that were looked at within that category. First was to switch to post-chlorination at the plant. The second was to increase the dosage rate of chlorine. I guess there were 4. Third was to increase the dosage rate to breakpoint chlorination. And the fourth was to put the 2 high ammonia wells that are currently in the system on a standby basis. The costs of those are included in your memorandum. The second alternative was to construct a chlorine booster station within the northeast part of the city. The third was to construct a reverse osmosis treatment system. And the fourth, to construct a biological filter treatment system. The report did recommend a combination of alternates 1A and B, switch to post-chlorination, and increase the chlorine dosage rate. This report is presented for your consideration, review, and acceptance, and if so accepted, it'll be forwarded to the DNR for their review and comment. We do have representatives of JEO here tonight, Ethan Joy and Noah Dryden. If you have any questions or if they have anything to add, certainly could do that at this time.
So what happens from here? Once we make the submission to the DNR, then it enters some kind of study period for a while, and then they issue their findings within roughly how long?
No time frame
Okay.
on the DNR.
All right.
Something
might freeze over first, is that what you're saying?
It could be. But yes, those are the steps from here on out. We would submit it to the DNR, receive their comment prior to any action at the plant.
Okay. And we hope that they go along with the 1A and 1B part of this rather than the 3 and 4. Obviously.
Yeah.
Man. Okay.
Yeah, that'd be a high increase for people.
Oh, man. I mean, it's just, yeah. I don't know what communities are supposed to do.
Randy, did they go over the entire report? I can't pretend to understand it all. I mean, it's really amazing. So thorough, yeah, thank you. Does the DNR go over the entire report and then they weigh in on whether they accept or reject JEO's recommendations? Is that, if we ever hear from them?
Yes, I would think that's what they would do. No, they'll go over the report, review it,
Read
and
it.
they
Okay, good.
usually don't hesitate to offer their comments.
Okay, good, thank you.
Okay, so the recommendation then from staff is just for the council to approve the initial report for submission to the DNR then. Is
Yes.
that correct?
Yes.
Any further questions on this? If not, I'd seek a motion to approve this review and acceptance of the water system preliminary engineering report. Unless you guys want anything that the council should be aware of, thanks for being here.
Sure,
But,
unless there's any questions.
We just don't want to do 3 and 4.
yeah, we don't
Yeah, we
either.
don't.
Yeah, Bruce doesn't either. Bruce doesn't
I
want
had
us
a
to do
quick
that either.
question on that. I mean, if we're able to remedy it with 1A, 1B, 1C, is there a reason why we have to put on there 2, 3, and 4? I mean, why does that information have to be on this report?
It's a good question, fair question. I mean,
Ethan Joy, JEO Consulting Group. We're just providing options for the city. There are some additional benefits to those other things, options 3 and 4. But I think the goal is to try something inexpensive first, deal with the chlorine residual issue with it's reacting with the ammonia in the system, go down that path, and then this gives you another path forward if that doesn't work. So it's kind of giving you some additional options. Now, you know, reverse osmosis is nice, it softens water, it's incredibly expensive, but we wanted to put it out there as potentially a solution if we had to get to it.
Are there many other cities that you know of that are doing reverse osmosis?
I'm bidding one bids, David City, Nebraska, we're putting one in we're bidding it Thursday.
Is it because of the same situation we're in?
No, they have lime softening. They currently already soften their water, and they wanted to use a non-chemical system. So use a lot of electricity and make soft water.
Is it a $9 million solution for them?
It's our estimate's about 5.9 million.
Oh, it's cheap.
Yeah, they're a little smaller community than you are.
Wow.
Yeah, nothing. The way the economy is right now, the plant work, any major improvements are very expensive. It's just the way it is. Any other questions I can answer?
Good question.
Thank you.
Would you feel better about deleting 3 and 4 and just running with that, or what? I mean,
I just didn't know how much you had to provide for them. That's why I asked if it had to be on
it's a
there.
fair question.
You know, and then you commented that it had some additional benefits, and it just made me wonder if, like, do the additional benefits, are they above and beyond what they're really asking us to do?
Yes, they would be in this, to address this issue. The additional benefits may address other issues.
Right.
But they would be above this issue. And the reason they're in, as Ethan said, the permit reissuance did request alternatives to address this. And so I think this report addresses quite a range of alternatives, particularly in cost. But I think the report probably responds well to the requirements of the DNR.
Okay, this is addressing problems within the northeast area of the city, but the more expensive alternatives in the report, does that address like problems throughout, any problems throughout our entire system throughout the city?
All of the alternatives, except building the chlorine booster station, would address all of the entire city. The northeast part of the city is probably the largest kind of lower chlorine residual area, but there are other areas of the city that do have some low chlorine residuals. So it's probably would be wise, I guess, to address the entire city rather than targeting the northeast part.
And that's what this report does.
Yes, well, that's what all the alternatives except building the chlorine booster station do. And that was included in there because the DNR's permit requirement was particularly stated the northeast part of the city. And I think it's probably better for the entire city to address the entire city rather than narrow it down to the northeast part.
Thank you.
What other questions anybody have for Randy? So what's your thoughts on approving it and the way it is, or maybe consider Misty's, I don't know if that was a suggestion or just a thought or an idea, but it's certainly valid, you know, to just. I suppose it could have a positive effect to the DNR. I mean, if, you know, that they look at it and they say, oh, no small community could absorb anything like that. And then so they would approve, you know, the simpler approach to it. It could have a positive effect on it, but, yeah. You have a comment there?
I do. You want me to come?
You come right on up. other water professional that probably isn't an engineer, but
No, I'm not an
knows a
engineer.
little something
I
about
do have a little
H2O.
bit of experience in water treatment, but the chlorine, added
Bruce
chlorine
Barnes.
to the system, in most cases, will take care of that low residual. The further you get away from the injection point, you lose strength in your residual chlorine in the water. So by adding an additional injection point or increasing the amount of chlorine injected at the point you guys are doing it now or post-treatment, would probably get your residual high enough that it would pass DNR. So I currently am licensed to do public water sources, which would be like a church that has a private well. And so the DNR gets involved with those, and it's the same situation. So we use chlorine feed for those to make sure the system's sanitized. And they test all throughout the facility. And if there's a part of the facility that's not getting the correct amount of chlorine residual, it's the same premise, just much smaller scale than a city. Then we either have to increase the amount of chlorine we're feeding, or we have to figure out a way to get it to that point. And that's basically what Randy's talking about with that proposal. So I don't think it's gonna be as hard to get DNR approval with chlorine feed as you may think. By doing so, I think it'll probably get up high enough. Most cities, that's how they sanitize their waters, with chlorine or chloramines of some kind. So in that case, I think that would probably get you what you need to without spending a bunch of money on reverse osmosis or other options. As long as you can hit their mark for residual test afterwards, that's what they're looking for. So.
Bruce, have you experienced anything like this in some of your other locations? What do you guys have, 6 or 7 locations now?
We've got 5 locations.
5,
And
okay.
I do, like I said, ours are not cities. I don't do any management of city at all, but I do a lot of public water. What the DNR considers public water sources is above a certain occupancy number on a private well source is considered a public water source.
Okay.
So they treat it as such, and so then they fall underneath the same rules that the city would fall under as far as what they have to have for residual for sanitation purposes. So it does happen in a lot of communities. It's even tougher in smaller communities where they don't have hardly any resources to do anything with. So it's a common thing, and then as our town grows, the boundaries get out further, and then that residual gets weaker as you get out to the new sections. And with no recirculation of any kind, pulling the chlorine back out into those areas, it gets weaker. So the plan that he's talked about, most likely you would probably get enough residual in the end without the fear of having to do the capital outlay of these projects.
Thanks, Bruce.
Yep.
Thank you very much. What's the council's wishes to proceed here?
I think we should include the full range that was considered. It shows our engineers did a very thorough job, and after looking at all the options, they came to the conclusion that that this should handle our problem. I think it makes us look thorough, and it's a very professional report, very thorough.
Yep, very good. So would there be a motion to effect is to follow the recommendation to review and accept the preliminary engineering report and submittal to DNR?
So moved.
Carolyn? And Tom? Any further discussion? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Base?
Yes.
Bauer?
Yes.
Schreck?
Yes.
Dirks?
Yes.
Seaman?
Yes.
Bornero?
Yes.
Motion is approved.
Very good. Thank you too, Bruce. Thank you. Okay, we are now to, let's see, the item 7B, Union Pacific Railroad Quiet Zone. And Randy, you're still on deck.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Following your last discussion of the UP Railroad Quiet Zone, it appeared that there was a consensus on a few items to come out of the meeting. One being that a reviewable quiet zone is acceptable. Not necessarily fully qualified, but reviewable. The proposed improvements that were kind of discussed at the time seemed to boil down to wayside horn at Burgess Avenue, supplementary safety measures, medians, at Carroll, alternative safety measures, shorter medians at Main Street, Clark Street being open with the probability of a 40-foot median on the north side of the tracks. Maple Street, supplementary safety measures, longer medians. Grant Road, it was necessary to place either an alternative safety measure, which would be a minimum of a 40-foot curb or barrier median on both sides of the track, or one alternate may be a wayside horn. And then a Bella Vista Drive, a wayside horn. So horns on the ends, kind of safety measures through the center to minimize impact on adjacent businesses. The currently projected costs are included with your memorandum. Total cost, construction cost being $1,625,000. And then with that, that includes the alternate safety measures at Grant Road. Then there would be an annual cost for the two wayside horn intersections of about $4,000 per intersection. Should you decide to go with a wayside horn at Grant Road, that would be substitute the alternative safety measure at $90,000 for the wayside horn at $155,000, plus $25,000 more for the UP work that is done for wayside horns, and we're up at $1,715,000 with then $12,000 a year of annual fees. So it's presented to you for further consideration, direction on how you want to proceed with the project. I guess before I stop, I'll bring up liability again, since it has been brought up to me. The FRA's liability statement is pretty general. What they do say is that one of the reasons that they have created this procedure for quiet zone establishment is so that the absence of blowing a horn does not create liability in the event of an accident or death, whatever may be, at a crossing. So in general terms, that's what the FRA has done. We have heard verbally, I guess, that in negotiation of the quiet zone agreement, that the UP Railroad will probably pursue transfer of liability to the city of everything they can. But that's negotiation. Pretty much what we have discussed is that the UP is responsible for their facilities, and the city would be responsible for city facilities. And the liabilities go with that responsibility. So nobody has written down liability until you negotiate the agreement with the UP Railroad.
Randy, do you have any idea what liability insurance would cost? I know some states have liability pools for their quiet zones, and has anybody, I know I brought it up years ago when we first started this, and I know in the congressional record, the FRA has stated that liability, if a situation arises, an accident, whatever, that it will play out in court. And that's when liability is allocated. So do you have any idea has anybody ever looked into it? What our premium would cost?
We have not looked into any additional premium for this type of a project. The city's general liability policy would cover this, but as far as its rating, that would have to be yet determined.
So that would come further down the process then, after we get everything in place. Okay, I have a couple questions. The ASMs have to be, have an annual review. Who does that? Is there a cost? Who's responsible for the cost?
I think it's a biannual review, I believe. Is it annual?
Yeah, it says,
Annual,
are subject to an annual review
Okay.
of the ASM's effectiveness. It's on page 2
The-
of their report, Bolton
Okay.
Mink.
I believe that's the UP Railroad.
Okay.
And we haven't been advised of any cost to the city for them
Okay,
to do that.
One other quick question, and I think you could probably answer this. The very first option for Grant Road was, and there's a diagram in the back showing this, and my question is, why wouldn't this be considered an ASM? The very first option they offered was 30 feet in length north of the crossing on Grant Road, and then 80 of the median, and then 80 feet on the south side. And this is the least intrusive on the businesses, specifically Smithfield. And you can see in the back, on attachment C, that the 80 feet really will not interfere with anything. And the recommendation we have, the Elm Street would be closed down, whether it's 40-40 or 80-30. And I was just, I couldn't find it in here, why this wouldn't be an ASM, because we're gaining 40 feet of median on the south and only losing 10 feet of median on the north. But it's considered open, so I'm assuming that's why the 40-40 was listed, because we get more points because it's an ASM versus an open crossing. Do you know why? To me, I don't get it.
Well, in the discussions with Bolton and Mink, they have advised that the only ASMs that they have gotten approved have been a minimum of 40 feet in length for the median barrier. So that's why we're doing it now. Of course, in any case, they could probably try through the FRA to get a 30-foot median approved as an ASM, but they have never been successful at that.
Oh, really?
So that's why they have included the minimum of 40 feet. And actually that has to be approved, but their experience has shown that it has been previously approved at that length.
I wonder if we could look at both, because to me, it seems like with the additional footage on the south, you know, I would think it would fly, but that's their experience, because the short median link on the north will provide access, Bolton and Mink say, to both the industry on the west, Smithfield, and the maintenance shop on the east. So that, to me, it seems like option 1 seems like the best deal, where we'll achieve what we want to achieve, but also we're not infringing on a business.
Right.
It's very important to Carroll.
But at the 30-foot median length, we've been advised that that would be an open
Yeah.
intersection. And placing an open intersection at that location, at that location, the quiet zone would not qualify.
Because of the high traffic volume, would that be it? Okay, that's.
That has an
okay.
impact on it.
That helped, thanks. Okay.
It should be noted too, I did speak with Farmland on Wednesday and twice this morning, and told them the 40-foot median and where it would begin and end. They did some measuring. They were of the belief, temporarily anyway, that they think they could maneuver around that and still gain access to the 3 tanks on the south side of their building. I told them that if this were to proceed, before we went to design and everything, that we would want to make sure so that we did not
Right.
impede their business that way.
Could you put a wayside horn on the north side of Grant Road and not on the south side and save that cost of additional horn?
I don't know the answer to that.
Okay.
I suspect that wouldn't be acceptable, but I could not say for sure. It's never been proposed.
Any other questions for Randy?
Just going back to the total. On here, you show 1.625, but you said it could be 1.7?
If you would, one of the alternatives is to substitute that Grant Road to a wayside horn. And if you do that, it would be at about 1.7.
Randy, on the sheet with the estimated capital costs, annual costs, notes, et cetera, a lot of costs aren't added in to this. But we're still at 1.6 million.
A lot of costs.
Yeah, well, like, for instance, as you work through initial agreement, proposed improvements, ASM, design, and then they build in a contingency. Under design, they say amount shown as minimum for integration of the wayside horn system. This has the potential to be a significant cost of panels, rail gates, et cetera, need to be improved. Capital costs not included in the total. So they mentioned throughout, under costs, that there are a lot, they couldn't give it to us. It's not their fault, they just
Right.
don't know.
Right.
So did they give you any indication of what this actual, the real numbers could be?
Well, I think that what that note might refer to is something that Bolton and Mink did present, that they have had experience with the railroad trying to load these projects onto the cities
Sure.
of crossing repair and signal improvement and that they have, they also stated that they've been successful in taking those out of the negotiations, that those are, crossing panels and replacement of signals are really maintenance items of the UP Railroad. And so I think that that's what this note refers to. These costs were provided by Bolton and Mink. And I asked them, put in everything you believe that would be in an agreement or be a cost to the city. And I think that's why they left those out.
Sure, sure. Well, it's, what you just said is in the narrative, but I just wondered if they had any idea based on their experience.
Well, I've studied this out for many, many hours. I went to Nevada, Ames, Boone, Ogden, Denison, and Blair, Nebraska, just to make sure. I did a lot of interviewing with a lot of people. This has been around about 20 years, a couple decades. We've been talking about this in the city. And I'm under the assumption that if you don't get rid of the train horn noise sometime, it's going to keep coming back. And it's been doing this for 20 years. It keeps coming back. But before this last study, the requirements from the UP were so difficult that it affected a lot of businesses. Now they've reduced those requirements so we can have, like Midwest Wholesale and Culligan, we can be able to work with those businesses so transportation of their business and their semis can work now. So the standards have changed to make this doable and not affect businesses like it has in the past. It comes down to a dollar figure as far as I'm concerned. I studied this enough to like, I'd like to implement it, but we have to worry about the money on the whole thing. Even if we agree to go forward with this, we're looking, a minimum 2 years before we even have to worry about financing anything, so we'd have plenty of time to set money aside for this. One of the questions I asked in Ames is, you know, the people that's been there for a while, and a lot of people didn't even, it's been there so long that they think that's the way it is all the time, no horns. In Boone, I talked to the UP guys, and, you know, they see no accidents or no safety problems at all because the gates come down, the lights come on, the bells go. So there hasn't been any problems for all these towns and all these years. So I asked a maintenance man in Denison, you know, what about these medians? Is that a problem? And he said, no, once the city workers know that they're there for snow removal, it's really not an issue. And then I talked to a bunch of citizens in Blair, because they've had theirs for 7 years now. And they had the mixture in their public like we have, like a 50-50 mixture. But if you had to ask the people in Blair now, would they ever go back to the train horn noise if they could recoup the money? And it's like, no, we don't ever want the train horns back. So all that, you know, we have to think about, but yeah, it's a money issue. We gotta decide if we wanna pay it. And that's my opinion. I spent about 40 hours with talking to all these people. And sometimes you gotta wait a long time for another train to come by to do another study, so that takes time.
And we've talked in the past about using TIF dollars for this. Yeah. I think what you alluded to is the risk factor. They adjust it frequently, work with UP, and that's why some of these things have they've reduced
Yeah, it's more
the risk
doable now
factor.
than it ever was
Yeah,
for the
that's-
businesses.
They rework those, yeah.
I think it's a big chunk of change to spend on just shutting off the horns. And by the time it does get to that point, how much is it gonna be? You know, I was just in a meeting right at the train station today. I didn't think it was that loud. And I'm sorry, but I was right next to the railroad tracks in one of the buildings. I just think it's a huge dollar amount. You look at 1.6, which is actually probably 1.7. By the time it's done, it'll probably be 2 million. Is it worth $2 million? Just asking. It's a lot of money.
Any other thoughts? Because we are, you know, at a point where, you know, like to Laverne's point is, you know, if it's not done now, you know, it's just gonna come up again or whatever. And, you know, I remember Mike in his parting ways, you know, he said, it's gonna be just like sidewalks. You know, it's always gonna come, I mean, people are always gonna be, you know, asking, and
Could have
Yeah.
been cheaper if we would have done it a while ago. So yeah, you're right, it's not gonna get any cheaper.
not gonna
It
get any
does-
cheaper, but.
it does become a hindrance to some people's, you may say that you didn't hear it, but I talked to several people who live closer to the tracks that work odd shifts, and they have a hard time sleeping when they're either way. I mean, just because it's so loud, and you know as well as I do, you visit your Culvers and your banks, and again, we wanted those businesses to go there, but they have a hard time hearing their customers as they pull up to their drive-throughs and so we don't want those places to go away. We want to continue to see growth and, you know, quality of life. I live clear on the other side of town, and the train horn keeps me awake every night, especially if the wind's blowing that way. That's just me personally.
It really does depend where you live. The area where I live, the northeast part, on a quiet night, if, you know, we can have engagements outside. If there's a train coming from Glidden, when it hits that subway area, we can't have a communication. You know, it's that loud. It echoes. But then there is other part of the town, people don't even hear it.
I don't doubt that there wouldn't be an improvement or quality of life. I mean, I think that's a given, you know. To say that we get to a point where we never notice them anymore because they're gone, you know, that's a given, you know. It's just, what can we expend, and particularly in the year that we're about ready to kick off here, and all of the other asks that we're faced with and that are looming. The staff needs direction. Do we act on this or not act on this? And so that's what I'm seeking from the council today, is do we act on it or do we not act on it?
I think we'll never truly know what it's going to cost in TIF dollars or whatever, you know, that's the way we're going until we jump into the process and negotiate and start our negotiations. And also we need to get the businesses involved and present what we're thinking of and be totally transparent, let them weigh in. Jeff's done some good footwork with Smithfield, but I think I've been involved in this. The trains don't bother me personally, but it's a 50-50 split with all of our citizen surveys. I was on a webinar with the FRA and the Iowa DOT when I think Mike was first hired, and they talked about the uniqueness of areas like Carroll, where you have a lot concentrated in a small space, like our retail. And so you have a lot of people in a small space impacted by the noise. Like I said, it doesn't bother me, but we have half our citizens in favor of it, half no. I guess I would like to pursue this further and get the process started and just see where we go with this, because a lot of time and money has already been spent.
So you're making a motion then to pursue it?
I will, or if someone else wants to.
Somebody's got
I'm just throwing out an idea. I mean, refute me. I'm just weighing in with my opinion, as Misty did.
I agree with you. They don't bother me. Carroll's been a train town. We've been a train town
yeah.
since the early 1800s, you know.
Yeah, we wouldn't be the county seat if the train didn't
Right.
donate the courthouse square, so.
Randy, what's the next step on this? What's the next step on this?
If you want to proceed, I would suggest that you engage Bolton and Mink to set up the schedule and begin the agreement, work to begin preparing agreements with the railroad.
And is that cost
Is
figured
that
in
the
here?
cost, what we're seeing here,
Okay.
the $8,000?
Yeah, $8,000 for Bolton and Mink, and then when you engage the railroad, it's about $40,000.
Right.
And your memo says also that they will create a timeline.
As best they can.
We're not saying definitively we're going ahead, but we're going to pursue this based on Bolton and Mink's study.
And we know at least it's gonna be 1.6 or 1.7.
Yeah.
I mean, at a minimum,
At a
that's
minimum.
what it's gonna be. So that's your decision tonight, is are you willing to expend 1.6 or 1.7 million dollars in train horn reduction and not a quiet zone? I wanna make sure that's crystal clear, that train horns will still sound. There's, I think, 6 different reasons that they'll sound them rather than just at a crossing. So that's the question. Do you want to expend 1.6 or 1.7 million dollars?
They're not gonna sound every time they come through
No,
town.
not at every
Just-
crossing, but you'll still hear them several times a day.
Only if there's something on the tracks or a reason for them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay.
They listed in that report, there's,
Yeah.
I believe, 6
Right.
or 7 different reasons too, quite common.
But there'll be a lot of times they come through town and they won't blow.
Correct.
Well, they travel so fast, they don't have time to do the
Correct.
pattern at each crossing.
Do you still have a motion?
I'll
Is
make
that
the
a
and
motion?
see- Yeah, I'll make the motion that we engage Bolton and Mink, as Randy's memo says, to,
I'll second it.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to further engage Bolton and Mink and to continue moving forward. I'm rewording your motion,
That's
and I
fine.
don't
No,
mean to do
you're-
that,
No,
but,
you're doing fine.
okay.
That's
To-
fine.
to move forward with it.
Forward and pursue more information.
based on this plan.
And see where we're at. We can stop the process anytime if it looks like, hey, this is way
Okay.
more than we thought. We don't know, you know.
So a motion by Carolyn and a second by Misty. Any further discussion? Anything to add? Did you want to add? No? Okay, good.
Sounds good.
No further discussion? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Bordenaro,
No.
Yes.
Dirks, Base,
Yes.
Bauer,
No.
Seaman,
Yes,
Shrek. No. 3-3, motion fails.
It's a simple motion. Can I break the tie?
You can.
Yeah,
Yes.
I'd be a no. Okay. All right, so, thank you. That is the end of tonight's agenda, or the business. Comments from the mayor, I have none. Comments from the city council? None. Comments from the city manager, or how about the interim city manager?
None right now. I'm gonna notify in the next portion of the meeting that we're getting
Yeah,
close.
are we getting pretty close? And then, so the next item would be a closed session pursuant to Iowa Code 20.17, union negotiations, and Code 21.9. Do we have from council approval to
Yes.
do such?
Yes, city council is so authorized.
Okay, very good. Thank you all. So is there a motion to go into closed session? So that was JJ?
Thank you.
Okay, and Tom?
If you would, that'd be great.
Okay. Any further discussion? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Shrek? Yes. Seaman,
yes.
Base,
Yes.
Bordenaro, Bauer,
Yes.
Dirks.
Yes.
Motion is approved.